a bathtub on wheels, impossible inventions, and three pensioners who refused to grow old. For nearly 4 decades, Last of the Summer Wine made millions laugh. But behind the laughter came heartbreaking death, serious health battles, and hidden sexuality far more complicated than anyone imagined. After 52 years, this is the Last of the Summer Wine cast, then and now in 2026. Jane Freeman was 38 when she first appeared as Ivy, the sharp-tongued cafe owner who could silence Campo with one glare, throw troublesome customers out without hesitation, and keep her husband Sid firmly under control. Across 31 seasons of Last of the Summer Wine, Ivy became one of Holmfirth's most familiar faces, serving tea while watching generations of foolish men return from yet another failed adventure. But Freeman's own childhood had already been shaped by a loss far more serious than anything the comedy ever showed. Born Shirley Ann Pithers on June 12, 1935, she lost her father in an accident when she was only 9. After her mother remarried, she was raised in Merthyr Tydfil and later trained at the Cardiff College of Music and Drama before spending years building her career through repertory theater. Her private life remained unusually well protected. In 1971, she married Michael Simpson, the artistic director of Birmingham Repertory Theater, whom she had met while working there. Their marriage lasted until his death in 2007, leaving Freeman widowed 3 years before. Last of the Summer Wine itself came to an end. By then, lung cancer eventually forced her away from public life. Jane Freeman died on March 9, 2017, aged 81. Audiences remember Ivy as the woman who ruled the cafe, but behind that famous temper was an actress who endured childhood bereavement, widowhood, and cancer almost entirely outside the spotlight. Peter Sallis became the quiet voice of reason in Last of the Summer Wine, always watching Campo and the others walk straight into trouble. He was 52 when the series began in 1973. He remained the only actor present across all 31 seasons. Yet behind that calm voice was a marriage that had already broken apart and would somehow continue for more than 30 years. Sallis married actress Elaine Usher in 1957. They divorced in 1965, but the separation did not truly end their relationship. The two later began living together again without remarrying, continuing this unusual arrangement for more than 30 years before finally separating in 1999. After all, Sallis was living through a far more complicated story of attachment, distance, and repeated reconciliation. Then came the challenge that could easily have ended his career. Macular degeneration gradually damaged his eyesight until he could no longer read scripts properly. Instead of walking away, he had his lines recorded and learned them by listening, one sentence at a time. Most viewers never knew how much effort it took for him to keep appearing. Beyond Holmfirth, his voice became famous as Wallace in Wallace and Gromit. Peter Sallis died on June 2, 2017, aged 96. In 2026, he is still remembered as the gentle man whose quiet delivery hid both remarkable endurance and a deeply complicated private life. Howard spent years sneaking through gardens, climbing walls, hiding behind hedges, and inventing increasingly ridiculous excuses to meet Marina, only to be caught, or nearly caught, almost every single time. Robert Fyfe was 55 when he joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1985. Yet his own marriage made the final chapter of his life far more heartbreaking than anything Howard ever experienced. Born on September 25, 1930 in Alloa, Scotland, Fyfe built a respected stage and television career long before arriving in Holmfirth. He shared a quiet and devoted marriage with his wife, Diana, and together they raised 3 children. His real life was built on loyalty and stability. At the same time, playing Howard demanded far more than comic timing. Well into his 60s and 70s, he continued filming outdoor chase scenes, climbing fences, riding bicycles, and performing physically demanding comedy that many actors much younger would have found exhausting. The greatest tragedy arrived away from the cameras. Diana died after a long illness in 2021. Only a few weeks later, Fife himself died from kidney disease on September 15th at the age of 90. Friends later reflected that the loss of his wife had deeply affected him during the final weeks of his life. In 2026, Howard remains one of British television's funniest comic husbands, forever failing to reach Marina. Nora Batty never needed more than a sharp glare, a raised broom, and her famous wrinkled stockings to send Campo running for cover. Kathy Staff was 45 when Last of the Summer Wine premiered in 1973. Yet the role that made her one of Britain's greatest comedy icons also became the role she could never truly escape. Born Minnie Higginbottom on July 12, 1928 in Dukinfield, Cheshire, Staff spent years working ordinary jobs before turning to acting. She married John Staff in 1951, and their marriage remained remarkably happy for more than 50 years. Professionally, however, fame brought an unexpected burden. Nora Batty became so deeply woven into British popular culture that casting directors repeatedly offered her similar roles such as Crossroads, Open All Hours, and Coronation Street. The pressure only grew when Crossroads became a frequent target of newspaper criticism over its low-budget production and technical mistakes. Although the controversy had little to do with her own performances, Staff found herself caught in the negative publicity surrounding one of Britain's most talked-about soap operas. Then, just months after completing her final screen appearances, everything changed. In 2008, Staff was diagnosed with an aggressive brain tumor. The disease progressed rapidly, and she died on December 13, 2008, at the age of 80. In 2026, audiences still remember Nora Batty chasing Campo across Holmfirth, while Kathy Staff is remembered as the actress whose greatest success became both her defining triumph and her most enduring challenge. Pearl never stopped watching. Every time Howard tried to sneak away to meet Marina, she always seemed to appear at exactly the wrong moment, turning his secret romance into yet another comic disaster. Juliet Kaplan was 46 when she joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1985. Yet just before the role transformed her life, she had lost her husband, struggled to support 3 children alone, and wondered whether her acting career had already come to an end. Born on October 30, 1938 in Bournemouth, England, Kaplan spent years performing in repertory theater and local productions. She married Harold Hollenberg in 1958, and together they raised 3 children. Then tragedy struck in 1981 when her husband died, leaving her to cope with grief, financial hardship, and the responsibility of raising a family on her own. As acting work became increasingly difficult to find, she later admitted that those years were among the darkest of her life. Everything changed when she was cast as Pearl. The suspicious wife who constantly outsmarted Howard became one of the series' most beloved comic characters and completely revived Kaplan's career after decades on the fringes of television. The success also opened the door to later appearances in popular programs, including EastEnders, proving that her biggest opportunity arrived only after years of personal struggle. Her final battle was fought away from the cameras. After living with cancer for several years, Juliet Kaplan died on October 10, 2019, at the age of 80. In 2026, Pearl is still remembered as the wife Howard could never outwit, proving that the role that finally changed her life came only after she had endured its hardest chapter. Marina flirted shamelessly, teased Howard at every opportunity, and somehow convinced him that this time he might finally escape Pearl's watchful eye. Jean Ferguson was 41 when she joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1985. Yet unlike the carefree woman she played on screen, Ferguson chose a life without marriage or children, devoting herself almost entirely to the stage long before television finally made her a household name. Born on December 30, 1944, in Barrow-in-Furness, England, Ferguson built a respected theater career that often earned more admiration than public recognition. She never married, believing her independence allowed her to dedicate herself completely to acting. That choice, however, also meant facing the uncertainties of the profession alone. As she grew older, competition for roles became increasingly difficult, forcing her to reinvent herself while many opportunities disappeared with age. Her greatest acclaim extended far beyond Last of the Summer Wine. Ferguson received widespread praise for portraying legendary comedian Hilda Baker in the acclaimed one-woman play She Knows You Know, earning an Olivier Award nomination and reminding audiences that her talent reached far beyond Marina's playful smile and flirtatious charm. The final months of her life brought a heartbreaking coincidence. Juliet Kaplan, who played her on-screen rival Pearl, died in October 2019. Only a few weeks later, Ferguson suffered a severe stroke and died on November 14, 2019, at the age of 74. In 2026, Marina remains one of British television's most unforgettable troublemakers, while John Ferguson is remembered as a gifted stage actress in Hollywood. Campo Simonite spent every episode chasing Nora Batty, tumbling down hillsides, crashing through fences, and surviving impossible stunts in pursuit of a romance that never happened. Bill Owen was already 59 when Last of the Summer Wine premiered in 1973. Yet behind Britain's funniest troublemaker was an actor who kept risking his own body well into his 80s before a devastating cancer diagnosis brought his remarkable journey to an abrupt end. Born on March 14, 1914, in London, Owen had already built a successful career as an actor, singer, and songwriter before becoming Campo. He married Edith Daggett in 1947, later remarried Kathleen Harvey in 1977, and eventually shared the screen with his own son, Tom Owen, who joined the series as Campo's son. But fame came with a price. Refusing to let stunt doubles replace him, Owen continued performing demanding falls, slides, and physical comedy despite repeated injuries at an age when most actors had already retired. Then came the shock that no one on the production expected. During filming in 1999, Owen was diagnosed with both bowel cancer and pancreatic cancer. His health declined with heartbreaking speed, forcing filming to stop before he could complete the new season. He died on July 12, 1999, at the age of 85, leaving the cast without the man who had been the face of the series from its very first episode. His final wish revealed just how deeply the program had become part of his life. Rather than returning to London, Owen asked to be buried in Holmfirth, the village where Campo had lived for more than 25 years. Glenda was the sweet, good-natured daughter of Edie and Wesley, whose innocent smile and gentle personality brought a softer side to Last of the Summer Wine. Sarah Thomas was just 34 when she joined the series in 1986. This role quietly turned Sarah Thomas into one of the program's longest-serving and most beloved actresses. Born on July 31, 1952, in London, Thomas had already appeared in productions including Doctor Who before arriving in Holmfirth. She married sound engineer Richard Lewis in 1975, and unlike many stars whose private lives became tabloid headlines, their marriage remained strong for decades. Thomas built a career on consistency, professionalism, and quiet dedication. Ironically, her greatest success also became her biggest limitation. Glenda was so warmly embraced by audiences that casting directors struggled to imagine her playing anyone else. Rather than chasing celebrity, she chose peace over publicity. Since Last of the Summer Wine ended in 2010, Thomas has largely stepped away from acting and enjoys a private life in London. In 2026, at the age of 74, she remains one of the few surviving principal cast members still remembered with affection as the gentle heart of Holmfirth. Wesley Pegden could spend hours inside his tiny workshop building bizarre machines that rarely worked, only to walk back into the house and face another lecture from Edie. Gordon Warmby was 49 when he joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1982. At first, Wesley was never meant to stay for long. Warmby had spent years accepting small supporting parts across British television, waiting for one opportunity that might finally change everything. That breakthrough arrived with Wesley. Audiences immediately connected with his understated humor and effortless chemistry with Thora Hird, prompting Roy Clark to expand what had been a minor role into one of the program's regular characters. It was the kind of career breakthrough many actors spend a lifetime hoping to receive. Just as that success reached its peak, life took an unexpected turn. Warmby was diagnosed with lung cancer, forcing him into a battle far more serious than anything Wesley ever faced on screen. His illness progressed rapidly, ending both his career and his life, while Last of the Summer Wine was still one of Britain's most popular television series. Gordon Warmby died on May 18, 2002, at the age of 68. In 2026, Wesley Pegden remains one of the show's most cherished characters, while Gordon Warmby is remembered as the actor whose quiet talent transformed a temporary supporting role into an essential part of Last of the Summer Wine. Auntie Wainwright could sell almost anything to almost anyone, usually at a price that benefited only herself. With her sharp wit, endless bargaining, and talent for turning junk into profit, she quickly became one of Last of the Summer Wine's most unforgettable late arrivals. Jean Alexander was 62 when she joined the series in 1988. Yet by then, she was already carrying one of the biggest challenges any actress could face. For 23 years, Alexander had been Hilda Ogden in Coronation Street, one of the most iconic characters in British television history. Leaving that role was a huge gamble. She deliberately stayed away from television for years, fearing audiences would never accept her as a different woman. However, Alexander never married and fiercely protected her privacy. She avoided celebrity culture, rarely discussed her personal life, and preferred to let her work speak for itself. Even after decades of success, she remained one of Britain's most private actresses. Her final years were marked by declining health. A serious stroke in 2014 left her requiring full-time nursing care, and she died on October 14, 2016, at the age of 90. In 2026, Jean Alexander remains one of the very few performers celebrated for creating two of British television's most beloved female characters. Barry always believed he was the cleverest man in the room, until Glenda or his mother-in-law proved otherwise. Whether chasing another round of golf or another hopeless scheme, Barry's confidence rarely survived the end of the episode. Mike Grady was 40 when he joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1986. But Last of the Summer Wine changed everything. Remaining with the series for nearly a quarter of a century gave him a level of stability that many actors never experience. The trade-off, however, was that such a long commitment inevitably limited opportunities to pursue major film roles or other long-running television projects. Instead of chasing Hollywood success, Grady became part of one of Britain's most enduring television institutions. After the series ended, Grady gradually stepped back from regular acting and embraced a quieter life in Gloucestershire surrounded by family. In 2026, at the age of 80, he remains one of the surviving stars of Last of the Summer Wine, remembered not for dramatic controversy, but for a career built on longevity, consistency, and the rare ability to keep audiences laughing for decades. Foggy Wilde always had a plan. The self-appointed military strategist barked out orders with complete confidence, even when his impossible schemes collapsed within minutes. Brian Wilde was 49 when he joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1976, and his commanding performance quickly transformed Foggy into one of the series' most unforgettable characters. Wilde had already earned widespread recognition as the mild-mannered prison officer Mr. Barrowclough in Porridge, but Foggy revealed a completely different side of his comic talent. His chemistry with Campo and Clegg became so popular that many viewers considered the trio the show's definitive lineup. In 1985, Wilde made the difficult decision to leave the series in search of new acting opportunities, believing it was time to move forward after nearly a decade in the role. The gamble never delivered the success he had hoped for. Although he continued acting, none of his later projects matched the popularity of Last of the Summer Wine. Meanwhile, viewers continued asking for Foggy's return. 5 years later, the producers invited Wilde back, proving just how deeply audiences had missed him. It was a rare moment when public demand reversed an actor's decision and brought a beloved character back to television. A serious fall in 1997 forced Wilde to leave the program permanently, and his health continued to decline over the following years. He died peacefully in his sleep on March 20, 2008, at the age of 80. In 2026, Brian Wilde remains one of the actors most closely associated with Last of the Summer Wine, remembered as the unforgettable commander whose return became one of the series' happiest surprises. Eddie Pegden could scrub a house until it sparkled, then climb into her car and terrify the entire village with another unforgettable drive. Thora Hird was already 75 when she joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1986. Her endless obsession with cleaning was matched only by the chaos she caused behind the wheel. Dame Thora Hird had built an extraordinary career spanning more than 6 decades, collecting multiple BAFTA awards and becoming one of Britain's most respected performers. Her marriage to James Scott lasted an exceptional 57 years, a rarity in the entertainment industry. When he died in 1994, the loss shattered her emotionally. Then came another battle that seemed certain to end her career. A fractured hip left Hird dependent on a wheelchair during her final years. Most productions would have written an actress out. Last of the Summer Wine did the opposite. The writers redesigned scenes around her physical condition, allowing Edie to remain an important part of the series while Hird continued working despite constant pain. Her determination became every bit as inspiring as the performances themselves. A stroke claimed Thora Hird's life on March 15, 2003, at the age of 91. In 2026, she remains celebrated as one of Britain's finest actresses, admired not only for an extraordinary career, but also for refusing to let grief, age, or disability bring that career to an early end. Truly, true love never needed to raise his voice to take control. The retired police officer relied on calm authority, dry humor, and years of experience to keep up with Campo, Clegg, and the rest of the gang. Frank Thornton was already 76 when he joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1997. Many actors would have considered that age the end of their careers. Thornton was about to begin one of the most memorable chapters of his. By the time he arrived in Holmfirth, Thornton had already become a television legend as Captain Peacock in Are You Being Served? Audiences instantly embraced Truly, whose arrival filled the gap left by Foggy and gave the long-running comedy fresh energy. Even after decades of success, Thornton proved that he could create another iconic sitcom character instead of living in the shadow of his earlier fame, a rare achievement for any comedy actor. His personal life reflected the same remarkable stability. Thornton married Beryl Shirley in 1945, and they remained together for nearly 68 years until his death. The greatest challenge came not from scandal or professional setbacks, but from the physical demands of filming. Well into his 80s, he regularly traveled between London and rural Yorkshire, enduring freezing weather, long filming days, and demanding outdoor locations simply because he loved performing. Frank Thornton died peacefully in his sleep from natural causes on March 16, 2013, at the age of 92. In 2026, he is remembered as one of the few actors to leave an unforgettable mark on 2 of Britain's greatest sitcoms, a legacy that continues to inspire generations of comedy performers. Smiler hardly ever looked happy. His permanently worried face, awkward silence, and hopeless luck made him one of the most sympathetic characters in Last of the Summer Wine. Stephen Lewis was 62 when he joined the series in 1988. Yet audiences already knew that unmistakable face from another comedy phenomenon, where he had spent years making millions laugh for completely different reasons. Lewis achieved nationwide fame as the strict Inspector Blakey in On the Buses, one of Britain's biggest sitcoms of the 1970s. Many actors struggled to escape an iconic role, but Lewis surprised audiences again by transforming himself into Smiler, replacing Blakey's loud authority with quiet vulnerability and gentle comedy. Few performers successfully reinvent themselves after becoming so closely identified with a single television character. Away from the cameras, Lewis lived a remarkably modest life. He never married, stayed close to his sister's family, and avoided the celebrity lifestyle that surrounded many television stars of his generation. His later years became increasingly difficult, as declining health forced him to retire from acting. Eventually, he moved into a nursing home, where he spent the final chapter of his life away from the applause that had once followed him everywhere. Stephen Lewis died peacefully on August 12, 2015, at the age of 88. In 2026, he remains one of Britain's most recognizable comedy actors, remembered for accomplishing what very few performers ever manage, creating two completely different sitcom characters that each became television classics. Tom Simonite arrived in Holmfirth carrying more than a famous surname. Introduced as Compo's long-lost son, he inherited not only his father's mischievous spirit, but also one of the most difficult jobs in British television. Tom Owen was 50 when he joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1999, stepping into the series only months after the death of his real-life father, Bill Owen. The decision to cast Tom Owen was far more than clever television writing. Producers created the role specifically to preserve Compo's legacy while allowing Bill Owen's own son to continue a family connection that audiences had loved for decades. It was an emotional tribute, but it also placed enormous expectations on Tom's shoulders. Every performance invited comparisons with his father, whose portrayal of Compo had become one of the most iconic in British comedy history. Away from the cameras, Owen shared a stable family life with his wife, Mary Kathleen Connolly, whom he married in 1978, and together they raised two children. Professionally, however, he spent years proving that he was more than simply Bill Owen's son. Gradually, viewers embraced Tom Simonite as his own character, allowing Owen to earn respect through his own quiet talent rather than through his family name alone. Tom Owen died unexpectedly on November 8, 2022, at the age of 73. In 2026, he is remembered not only as Compo's on-screen son, but also as the actor who turned a deeply emotional inheritance into a heartfelt continuation of one of Britain's most beloved television families. So that's Last of the Summer Wine, 1973 to 2010, after 52 years. Which cast member changed the most over the years, and which unforgettable character will always be your favorite? Share your memories in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this journey through one of Britain's most beloved sitcoms, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next Then and Now video.